This is going to be our review for the Lab 4 test. You did Lab 4.1 in class. You took a green dot of ink and you put it into a beaker with some water. And you didn't let the water touch the ink dot because you didn't want the ink dot to dissolve into the water, but you wanted the water to crawl up the paper. This told us to observe what happens to both the water and the ink after 5 minutes. So our results for that are over here on the bulletin board. Some results. This group seems to have used a bigger dot of ink than others. That's fine. But if you look at the top, we have a blue dye. Let's look at this one right here. So this one also has a blue dye at the top. So the blue dye moved the fastest. That means it's more soluble than the other colors. At the bottom, we have some green, and at the very bottom, we've got some yellow. I hope the yellow comes through. So in this case, the most soluble dye is the blue dye. The least soluble is the yellow dye because it moves slower. The more soluble dyes move faster. So even though this is a green marker, it's got multiple different dyes in it, and the results are the same. If you go across the groups, the blue dye is moving the farthest in the least amount of time, or in the same amount of time. This one, for some reason, got a little curve in there, but the blue dye at the top is still the fastest, and the yellowish color at the bottom is still the slowest. All right, that was 4.1. 4.2 was comparing inks, and what we did was we took 4 different colors of marker, and this is from one of our classes. We have very similar results. Some people put the pens or the markers in different orders, but if we look at a particular color, say this one is black, we have similar results on each of the chromatograms for the black. Now, interestingly, these two were probably left in the water for the appropriate amount of time, as was this one. But one of them, let's see if we can get it in the camera here. This one appears to have been left in the water a little longer. The solvent was allowed to carry the inks up farther because it had a little bit more time. But if you look at the patterns, you still see that the blue dye at the very top was the fastest. Yellow is still slower than the green, okay? But then we also need to notice that our black marker, our black marker is not just black. It's also got some of the same blue dye as the green. So you get the blue at the top, blue at the top, blue at the top. So it doesn't matter which marker the blue dye comes out of, it's still the fastest, most soluble dye. Interestingly, the red dye has a yellow in it that seems to be faster than the rest of the red, and it matches up with the yellows of the other markers. So this yellow has moved up a little bit, so that tells me that this yellow is probably up here mixed with the bottom end of the green as well. The orange part of, what color is this? The orange part of the brown and the orange part of the black are at about the same position on the chromatogram. So we can see that the orange dye moves the same speed no matter which marker it's in. So there's your orange area. So whatever marker the dye comes out of, it still moves at the same speed. That helps us know that the company that was making these markers was using the same dye in each of their different colors of marker. So the pattern is the same on all of these. But like I said, you can tell that this one was left in the solvent a little bit longer because the rest of the dyes continued to move up. What do you think would happen if we left this in the water, twice as long? All right, let's go look at the questions that the book tells us to think about. It says, what can you say about the composition of each color? Well, are you able to write down the different colored dyes that are in the green marker and the black marker and the red? Do the dyes of the same colors always behave in the same way? Well, we can see that the fastest, most soluble dyes are always at the top, and the least soluble, or the slower dyes, are at the bottom. So orange is in the middle, red's down here at the bottom, it's always at the bottom. So we're able to tell that the different solubilities affect the speed. Okay, and that answers that question as well. It tells you that the blue dye is the most soluble, and apparently the red dye is the least soluble because it's the slowest. So the faster ones go up the sheet because they are more soluble. Then, inquiry 4.3, this was where we were trying to figure out who signed the check. And the book tells us to use 3 black markers. The one labeled B was the owner of the checkbook. The one labeled C was a notorious criminal who most of us initially said, oh, that must be the person that stole the check. And pen or marker number D, letter D, was the bank teller. So we've got 2 pieces of evidence from this, and I hope they're marked properly. I think they are. So this is 2, hang on a second. These are 2 versions of the same test. So the check signature is, let's see, get my pointer in here. The check signature, the ink from it is right here. The owner of the checkbook is letter B. The criminal was this marker or pen, and the bank teller was this marker. Now the test question says, who stole the check? Can we tell who stole the check? So this is the rightful owner of the check. Can we say that we know that the rightful owner did not sign the check with their pen? Can we say that the criminal didn't sign the check? It kind of looks, I wonder where this bit of dye came from. I think it might have moved over from here because we don't have that on this chromatogram, sorry. The bank teller's marker or pen had some soluble pigment, but not very many soluble pigments. The criminal's pen was completely insoluble, and this one looks like it's completely insoluble. So what does this data suggest? I'm not sure that this is exactly the same data that you'll see on the test, but you need to say to yourself, do we see the same dyes across these? Do we see the same solubility here, here, or here? This data will be posted on the bulletin board with the Lab 4.1 data. Please complete the sheet that you got in class, or if you're at home, please complete it to the best of your ability, the copy that's in Schoology.